So if you're like me, you scour the internet looking for great licks to play because you're running out of them. And I'm going to tell you, most of the time, you're not running out of licks. You're just practicing the ones you know the wrong way. So we're going to take really simple lick, and I'm going to show you that with one very, very simple lick, you can come up with dozens and dozens of great licks. So let's just do this in the key of A. And let's come up here to where we would play our bar chord A, and this is that regular minor pentatonic shape that we all know. And we're just going to play a really simple lick like this. Now all I'm doing is just walking down this minor pentatonic scale. And most of the time, if you were to learn that lick, you would just keep practicing it like that over and over again. But I don't want you to think of licks that way. I want you to learn it the way it's played, but then I want you to expand it. The reason I say go practice these licks, experiment around, come up with your own, see what you can come up with, is because I don't want you to just regurgitate licks. That's not getting you any better, and that's not helping you build solos. So one of the things that you might do with this lick is, instead of playing it in that rhythm, try some different rhythms out. I mean, something like, right, I'm still walking down the minor pentatonic scale, but now that lick sounds completely different just by adding a different rhythm to it. Now, another thing that we can do with any lick, especially if we're just hitting these notes, is that we can try to throw some bends in there. So I tend to bend better with my ring finger, so let's try, anytime I hit a note with my ring finger, I'm going to try to bend it. So that sounds completely different than the original, and all I'm doing is that anytime I'm hitting, one of those notes with my ring finger, I'm just bending it. Now you can bend notes with your pointer finger as well, so maybe I bend that last note. So that one even sounds, different than the other one. So this is the way I want you to practice, is begin to think, which notes can I bend, or what rhythms can I add to make this different? And always remember that any lick that you can run in one direction, you can also run in the other. So we were running down this scale. Why don't we try running it backwards? And of course, that sounds completely different playing the lick backwards. And again, we can throw some bends in there. And that lick sounds different. Now, one of the things that I notice as I'm sitting and practicing and experimenting is I'm noticing that when I bend this note, I'm bending up to this one. So when I bend this 8th fret on the B string, I'm actually bending up to this 5th fret on the E. So I'm bending up to my A note. So instead of, hitting this A note, one option I have is to just bend up to that A note. Bend up to that note right here. And the other thing that I know about bending is if I'm bending, that's the same as coming up here and hitting this note. So this note, the bend, and then just hitting this 10th fret on the B string, that's all the same note. But they all sound different. Hitting this 5th fret sounds different than bending it, and bending it sounds different than sliding up and hitting this 10th fret on the B string. So those are all different options I have while I'm playing. That might be a lick in and of itself. Bending up, hitting this 5th fret, and then sliding up to the 10th fret on the B string. That can be its own lick just because I'm experimenting around and I'm realizing that bending, hitting this, and sliding up are all the same note, but they all give a little bit of different flavor as I'm playing it. Now, there's another thing I really want you to do while you're practicing, is I want you to listen to notes that you really like the sound of. So, as I'm walking, down, maybe I'm doing these bends, and I notice, I like the way those two sound together. The seventh fret on the G string being bent, and then hitting this fifth fret on the G string. So yeah, I really like the way that sounds. So I'm just getting that, from practicing running down, and throwing some of those bends in there. But I realized I really like the sound of that, so that is going to be a lick that I use because I really like it. So I can just kind of put that on repeat and throw that in there whenever I want to, and there's a new lick for me. I also, when I was bending, I really liked the way that note sounded, that fifth fret on the G string. I like that being bent up. So experiment around with these, and if I can, if I like the way that those notes on the G string sound being bent, and kind of put on repeat, maybe I like the ones on the B string as well. So those are, you can come up with a lot of different licks just with those. And I'm finding those by just experimenting around inside of that original lick. Now, another thing that you can do is try to skip a note in your lick and see what that might sound like. So, maybe I don't want to hit this fifth fret on the B string. Maybe I just want to do those bends and not hit this one. So I really like the way that sounds, skipping this fifth fret on the B string. Or maybe I'll like if I don't hit the eighth fret. I like the way that sounds too. Or maybe I skip the eighth fret on the B string and the seventh fret on the G string. I like the way that sounds as well. So don't think that you have to play things in order. Try, skipping a note here or there and seeing what that sounds like, experimenting around with these licks. So I hope that you see that you don't have to learn all of these complicated licks. A lot of times what we do as guitarists is take really simple licks and just experiment around with them. Run them forwards, run them backwards, skip a note here or there, throw some bends in there, see if there's licks and notes that we like that we can sort of put on repeat, and this will give you an infinite supply of licks. So I really do hope this helps. And as always, if you need something, reach out to me. I'll be glad to help you.